I could be content with my broken poverty pack German car. Instead, here we are, more rust. This rust down the bottom that somebody has previously patched. I do still anticipate that this is an easy repair. This spot up the top though, getting a little tricky. It's sort of right down in here, underneath this thing. But here's my other problem. Down in here. Now I've dropped the air conditioning out of the way, and let me show you up inside this hole. Hole being the word. I've got more rustage to deal with. Look at that big hole back there. Wicked. That mess is hiding in behind here. And I don't have a plan of how I'm going to deal with all of that yet. But what I do know is that stuff has to be cut to pieces. All right, well here we are. I've got a big hole and a small one. It's not looking too bad actually. So this is all straightforward, just a patch. Up in here, I managed to get all of the crusty piece out. I actually split the seam and was able to push it out from the middle of the sandwich, which is good because I'll be able to repair this with new steel where there should be steel, instead of having to butt the repair up to one side and the other. The inside is looking, well, pretty gross. I've put acid over everything, that's why it's black instead of brown. There's no actual holes or anything in any of this, it's just a bit scabby. So I'm going to go away and make a whole bunch of little square steel patches, and then I'll be back and we'll weld all of this back together. Okay, so we've got a bit of a layered repair going on here. If we look up at this top one, I have to slide this piece in from the back. This edge is on the inside. If I jam this through here. There it goes. And then just a small rectangle to fill up the hole. Down here, I first need to repair the flange, like so. And then our main repair panel in here. And just a small cover piece. Oh, by the way, this is just a piece of aluminium sitting here because I've got brake lines and all sorts of stuff sitting just in behind, which I obviously don't want to torch. And in fact, while I think about it, this is the boot release cable, and I want to put some fiberglass cloth around that before I forget. So that's that held in place for now. Next I'm going to turn my attention to this small patch. The neighbour's staring at me. Great. I need to spot weld, or replace a spot weld with a plug weld. I need to weld through here. It's a little tricky because I'm dealing with 4 layers. First I drilled through the top 2 layers with a normal sized drill bit. 7mm I think this is. I don't know, it's the sharp one. And then enlarged the hole. And here you can see the replacement panel slides back into the sandwich with a 7mm hole, resulting in a staggered hole. And for whatever it's worth, I splashed some primer in between the existing layers. I've had quite a few comments about that over the last few videos. So all of the spray can grey primer you see me using is weld through primer. Next I'm going to fully weld the inside. I'll try and show you guys what that looks like. But this is our new piece, and this is where I'm going to weld it. Okay, that all looks pretty decent. Here's the inside. I know some of you are interested in that. I did have quite a bit of popping and farting up through here, so I may cut into this and re-weld this small section here, but I'll deal with that later. Right now, I want to fit this guy. And to do that, I need to grind back a little bit of this weld. In fact, I need to grind back all of this weld because ultimately I need to refit the reinforcing bar that goes here. Oh, sorry, I just heard the camera go click, so you probably missed those first 3. Never mind.
Now let's deal with this poopy pre-existing mess. I don't know if this was done professionally or not, but this is typical of a cheap rust repair. A piece of metal slapped over a rusty hole. And this is what happens when you just patch over a rusty hole. The rust just gets worse and worse. But I guess it got the guy through his warrant of fitness check.
I don't think these little tabs have ever been taken off, so presumably they're on decent metal, but we'll see. Once I get rid of the rest of this weld, we'll see what's underneath.
So in the end I just removed everything that was left of the edge of the side panel, and you can see that the back face of the pillar is a little pockmarked, but nothing significantly deep, so it'll be fine like this.
I was just getting the edges ready to go, outside and inside, and I hit the wiring loom. I've got this piece of paper here, and I had everything tucked up here so it wouldn't get hit by the grinding sparks and things. And I was just grinding this little spot up here, absent-mindedly tickling the paper, and then I remembered that the paper was hard against this. Idiot! Anyway, I've got my patch ready to go, so let's get this tacked in. Hopefully without burning the car down. Oh, before I forget, there was some weirdo who wanted clean audio of my welding helmet for a ringtone. So here it is.
And here's the end result. I did reuse the existing tabs, and hopefully the holes are in the right place. I mean, they should be, I measured them, and that never fails.
Alright, so I declare this area rust-free. Obviously I still need to put the reinforcing bar back on, but I want to go chasing more trouble first. So now I'm going to go digging around this floor area. I might have some trouble over in this corner. I think that'll probably just clean away. But I'm pretty sure I'm going to need a patch over on this other side where this mud flap support bracket thing sits.
It's not too bad. The white line is where we're going to cut. The bit at the back is rusted through, and I'll just cut around the whole crusty area. I did briefly consider unstitching all of these welds and remaking the panel. You can see it's not a very big panel. But I don't want this to become a project, so a patch repair will be just fine. Now over here, I am going to cut this flange apart. I think it's probably pretty crusty in between the two layers of steel.
Okay, so here's our patch ready to go. So the main floor repair panel is in. Next I need to weld in that small patch you can see over there on the other side. There wasn't any kind of hole here, but the seam itself was quite crusty. I think I showed that. So the patch is really just the piece I cut out to clean underneath. Now, a lot of you have been asking about the other side. How bad is it? Well, let's go have a look. It's not too bad. I have 3 patches to weld in. This was the main hole. Pretty straightforward repair. There is this little piece that goes on the underside too. Just here, I didn't really need to do this, to be honest. The edge along here looked a little crusty, so I cut this out to clean it, but there really wasn't anything underneath. We've got a bit of a hole back here. There was a patch of dirt stuck behind it here, and 2 corresponding little holes. In terms of the rest of the driver's side, like this pillar, there is no evidence of any rust whatsoever coming through from the inside. And I know you can't really see, but the bottom of the pillar as well, nothing to worry about. It's a little crusty right on this corner where the seal was leaking, but that doesn't even need fixing.
So I'm merely welding this patch in place. And my welder died. But the good news is, I found that this fuse on the main control board was blown, and I managed to buy a replacement one at the electrical supply place in town. So problem solved. No.
Well, it's not looking good. I replaced the blown fuse, and it immediately blew again.
So I have no idea why it's not working. The power supply side is fine. If I pull the trigger, I get gas for a couple of seconds, but no wire feed. And then it cuts out completely. I really need a working welder, not another project. And besides, if the control board is faulty, it's not like I'm going to be able to buy a replacement board. This welder is about 18 years old. So unfortunately, at least for now,
retirement time. Yeah, kind of annoying. Anyway, moving on. The new welder is at least a few days away, probably middle of next week. Instead of doing nothing and waiting for that, I'm going to move on to getting the next part ready. Do as much as we can before the final welding. And the next area, and last area, is the rust below the Alpine window. So the service manual wants me to remove all of this and the glass. But you can see up here, we're clear of this trim and just a tiny bit snagged on the front. So I'm going to try and get away with it. We just have to sort of move forward a tiny bit.
I was intending to remove the glass from the Alpine window and rear quarter, to avoid damaging the glass. Every grinding spark that hits glass leaves a little mark. Plus I have new seals for all the fixed windows anyway, but I didn't remove the glass, just because I want to get the rust repairs done as quickly as possible at this point. My daily driver hasn't technically been driving daily for quite a while now, so I covered the glass with 2 layers of masking paper, more where it's folded over right next to the repair. I mean, you know, it could be worse. Ute conversion coming up. Okay, so I've made a window. Most of what I've cut out here is fine and will be reused, welded back on. But I needed to remove it to get to this back. The bottom surface here is actually not too bad, so I don't need to cut that out. But I do need to cut out all of that. Hopefully I've gone far enough here to get a cutting disc back in here. Well, we'll find out. I don't want to go any further because this becomes a different structure. Anyway, the next job is to hack away more of this. Okay, so here's the situation. Everything is black because I've just put phosphoric acid on it. So our major repair, welding in this piece, straightforward, no problem. And I do unfortunately have a few holes in here, just where the pitting is extra deep. This is the screw hole, these other ones are rust holes. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do about this right now, if anything. You see, the problem is that underneath here, the outer rear quarter is bonded to the underside of this with a rubber sealant. So welding this is just going to cause an awful lot of smoke and mess. I do one day intend to paint the car, and when I do that, I'll probably remove the rear quarter. So I might just leave these and fix them from the underside one day in the future. I'm not sure yet. I also could put a patch over it, or I could just try and weld them closed, which is probably what I'll do. Don't know. I'm very fortunate that none of this rust got into the roof panel. You can see I have a tiny little bit of scarring here, but that's it. If this broke through the back wall of the square tube that's missing now and got into this seam down in here, that would be a much bigger problem to fix. New welder has arrived, and apparently new welders are tiny things that don't come on wheels anymore. But I have a solution. I just happen to have this old thing sitting around that has wheels on it. Genius. I decided to just cut out the rust and weld in a normal patch, and just try and clean away as much of the rubber as possible first. As it turned out, this wasn't really a problem, and the patch welded in just fine. Nothing like the nightmare welding that I was about to encounter putting this panel in. That joint at the back looks pretty clean, and I didn't anticipate major problems. Some popping and farting is to be expected. I'm welding right next to a seam that's full of paint and rubber sealant, but that's not unusual, and the MIG should power through okay. But this was almost impossible. The only reason I kept going was because there is no viable alternative. The only way to fix this section cleanly would be to cut the outside of the roof away, or undo every spot weld holding the roof on and remove it completely. So anyway, I ground the weld back to see how bad it really was. And it's
pretty bad. You can see a lot of holes through here. Not so much down this end, but still, this isn't good enough. So now I'm going to run back over this with another bead of weld. And because this weld has pretty much sealed us off from the rubbery mess in behind, it shouldn't be anywhere near as bad this time.
It's pretty ugly. Lots of bits needed welding twice, but it's solid and done.
As you can see, I smothered it in seam sealer. It probably didn't need it, but I don't really want water coming through from the back through any tiny pinholes. The underside of this section is sort of exposed to the outside, so it's possible pressure would force moisture through tiny gaps, especially up until I take the rear quarter out and reseal everything properly. Anyway, I'm going to splash some paint over the top of this because I'm going to ultimately put cavity wax in here, and I'm not sure how the seam sealer will go being covered in cavity wax for the rest of time.
This is the front half of the repair. This is mostly just the piece of panel I cut out to gain access to the back of the repair. But there is a small new section of steel at the end, where the original panel had rusted away.
All tacked up and ready to go. I'll probably grind some of these tacks down flush. That just means the end result won't be so lumpy where the tacks are. Okay, I'm going to do the top first just because that's the more difficult part and I want to get it out of the way. I have access with the torch, that's no problem. The problem is, with my helmet on, I can't really get my eyeballs high enough to see the line. Okay, well, that all went relatively well.
And I did grind the welds back on the side face, not the top. I might be using this vehicle for a while without the interior put back in, and it doesn't need to look like a welded together puzzle. Not that I'm trying to hide anything. Probably should have left it alone. I don't know, whatever. It's done now.
Well, now that that Alpine window mess is sorted out, and I have a welder again, I guess I better finish off the floor and this mess on the side. Okay, so the last job is to put this back on. But there are a couple of things I want to do underneath first. This edge here, this double skin section, is a bit of a rust trap. You can see it sits right underneath here. Now Land Rover did use seam seal up to the reinforcing bar, but obviously when this is in place, you can't seam seal underneath there. So, now that we have the opportunity to do it without this in the way, I'm going to seal this joint. Now, I could use seam seal, but we're going to be doing spot welding right over the top. And that'll probably burn the seam seal off. So instead, I'm just going to run a bead of weld up here. Okay. Okay. That'll do. Now the next thing I'm going to do, which is a little bit maybe unnecessary, is install this big thick piece of steel up the side of the pillar. And so I don't stand here trying to reword the same thing over and over again, I'm going to leave it to the other guy to explain that.
So this pillar, particularly the edge we're looking at here, has been cut up and re-welded. Plus, if you remember from the last video, the reinforcing plate underneath was pretty pitted. I think the repair to the pillar, as it is plenty good enough. But are we talking 98%, 95%, as good as it was? I don't know. Presumably there is some kind of degradation compared to when it was new. So I'm putting an extra piece of 2mm thick steel in. Anyway, like I already said, I think the repair was good before, but this didn't cost me anything or add any significant time to the job, so why not? Well, don't copy dumbasses like me on the internet, that's why not. Under these circumstances, I haven't really changed Land Rover's structure. They put a thick reinforcing plate on the inside, which is a little bit affected by rust, and I'm adding a new bit of plate on the outside in the same location. I'm saying this as a bit of a disclaimer, you do whatever you want. But it's generally not a good idea to put heavy plate into anywhere that could be part of the crash structure of a vehicle. You can see I've stitch welded the panel on. This will be seam sealed all around. And where the reinforcing bar covers this plate, the weld goes right through, so there won't be any hidden gaps. It's important that I don't just make another rust sandwich.
Alright, this is the last piece of the rust puzzle. I just have to clean up the edges, get them ready for welding, and then it'll be done. Geez, I'm getting a little emotional. No, not really.
And that's it. There is no more welding to be done. The rust repair journey is over. Well, not counting this little patch. Look, the only reason I haven't repaired this is because I'm going to use a small replacement panel, and I didn't want to order that separately from the UK. I'll get it when I put through the next parts order. Otherwise, there's really nothing left to weld. This part of the journey is over. Now the vehicle is about where I hoped it would be when I purchased it. So I am obviously going to seam seal and cavity wax the repairs and install the guards and doors, generally get it back to a whole car. I'll do that before you next see it. Which brings me to my next point. What happens now? Well, I haven't had time to think about it yet. There is a plan, but there isn't an order. This is going to be a good, reliable, ugly daily driver. That's phase 1. But putting the Discovery to the side for a second, I may as well update you on the other Land Rover, since every single comment is asking about it. You know, the real one. It's here, not going anywhere, it's in running condition, By that I mean it's full of oil and water and starts up, which I do occasionally. Once the Discovery is driving, I'll be back on this, I think. There's a complication with this vehicle. I have to change my house before I can finish it. Same reason the Discovery is outside. Point is, it's not at risk of becoming an abandoned project. You'll see it again soon enough. There's only one of me, okay? And I frequently make bad decisions. Just kidding. This was the best decision of all time. And I can't wait until this vehicle once again purrs like the detuned V8 luxury-ish vehicle it was meant to be. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.